Hi everyone. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to take these USB sticks and turn it into this one. It began with Etcher and Rufus USBs. 3 were given to Apple, immortal, unified, and daring to be different. 7 to Microsoft, great developers and programmers of the modern world. And 9 USBs were gifted to Linux, who above all else desire power. For within these USB sticks was the bootloader and files to install each system. But they were all of them deceived. For another program was made. In the lands of the web, in the fires of GitHub, the developers at Long Panda coded a master program to help all others. And into this program they put their commits, code, and will to dominate USB boots. One USB to rule them all. Now the answer to the question that you're asking right now is no, I'm not entirely crazy, just a little bit. In my previous video about Linux and playing Elder Scrolls on Linux, I got some questions about, okay, how do I get started with that? And it's a really good point, but it does bring up a huge other question mark, which does cover the entire industry. And since we are getting rid of Windows in 2021, or at least I am, we also should get rid of something that I know that most of you, and definitely I, do a lot. Now, when we want to install something on a computer, what we normally do is get an ISO image from the web, Windows, Mac OS, Linux, various Linux versions, hypervisors. We'll download it, pop a USB stick in, and then we'll get going. We open up Etcher, we put the ISO on the USB stick, pop it in the computer after, and then we can load up Windows. Then I'll take another one, and I'll put Manjaro on that one. And I'll pop it into computer and install Manjaro. Awesome, now I have 2. Then I'll want to install Proxmox on some servers, so I'll download Proxmox, put the USB stick in, open up Etcher, put Proxmox on that USB, put it in the computer after, and boom, now I've got Proxmox. 3 USB sticks, and then a 4th, and I think you can see where this is going. So, either we are basically like weird tech versions of the Keymaster guy in the Matrix, or we're morons. Since I don't have a massive keychain of USB sticks, we can only surmise that I am the second, which is a moron. So what we're going to solve today is 2 problems. Firstly, we're going to solve our issue of being morons, and I know that it's you also. Almost everyone watching this video who is in tech or servers does this. I've seen this happen, it happens all the time. We're going to solve this problem. Just bear with me, trust me, I will help you. We're going to get through this together. And we're also going to solve the second problem, which is installing Linux for the very first time on a computer, which for a lot of people is a new thing. Based on my previous video, a lot of new users came into there asking about installing Linux. And because of that, I am going to focus this series of videos on getting started in Linux from a basic level. So if you are used to Linux, then either watch this for the entertainment, which I hope there is some, or maybe watch something else. But if you're new to Linux, then definitely stick around for these series of videos, because I really do want to take you through this, because it is going to be awesome to be able to progress this further. But for this video, I'm going to solve all of our crazy problems about USB sticks and ISO images and keychain masters and all the other random words that I used at the start of this video. So for this video, we're going to take you through Ventoy. Ventoy is a multi-boot USB system, and rather than show you it right now, I'm actually just going to take you through setting it up. We're going to go over to my computer now, and then we're going to install it and we're going to get it going, and I'm going to show you how to use it and how it works. And that will be this video. In the next video, I'm going to take you through how to actually install Linux from a USB stick, which you'll make in this video, hopefully using Ventoy. So now that we're at the computer, we're going to take you through the steps to get Ventoy installed. It's a very simple process. I'm going to show this process here on Manjaro Linux, but it is important to note that this process is basically the same for most operating systems. It's just that I'm using Linux for this. The main thing to note from this is that the interface of Ventoy basically looks the same across all its versions, so there's no ambiguity there regarding about what you should use and where to click options and so on. So from the desktop here, you want to open up your browser. Mine is Brave. You're going to head over to ventoy.net. There are several versions of this program. So you want to head over to downloads. And then you want to click on the Linux version if you're using Linux, or the Windows version if you're using Windows. So click on the Linux version. This is going to take you over to GitHub. Don't worry if you don't know how to use GitHub or anything like that. Doesn't matter for this point in time. Scroll down, find the zip file or whatever you want to use here. We're going to click the Linux version here. We're going to click that, and I'm going to save this to my downloads folder. So now that we've downloaded this version, we're going to close this down. We're going to minimize this. And we're going to open up my downloads folder here. You're going to have a zip folder. You're going to go down to extract and extract archive here, and then open up the containing folder that comes out. And you're going to have a bunch of different versions in here. What I will note now is you're going to take your USB stick and you're going to pop it in your computer. I'm just going to pop mine in there now. After you've done that, for Linux and for Windows, from basically most people, you're going to use the x86 64-bit version of the software. You can pretty much ignore the other ones unless you're doing something special, in which case this tutorial is probably not for you. So what you're going to do now is you're going to double click on the Ventoy GUI x86 64-bit version. Double click that. It's going to ask you if you want to execute this. You're going to say yes. And then you're going to type in your password. But what you'll see is basically this screen, except in Ventoy and device, you're going to get basically a blank box there. So what you can see here is the selection of the USB device that you've got here, my Samsung 128 gig USB-C device. The Ventoy in package refers to the version of Ventoy that you're using right now on the computer, and Ventoy in device is the one that's being loaded onto the USB device or whichever hard drive you're using for Ventoy. Status ready basically just means it's ready to use or install. We're going to hit install for now. It's going to ask you if you want to format it and lose the data. It's going to say OK. It's going to ask you to double check it just to make sure. And then it's going to do this installation process. Once it's been done, Ventoy has been installed successfully on the device. You can press OK. You can now close down Ventoy, and then you can go to your removable device, Ventoy. And you'll see that the folder is empty. And then you can drag and drop your ISOs to this here. So we're going to open up Brave here again, and we're going to go on to Manjaro, and we are going to download KDE Plasma here. So we're going to click that, and we're going to download this image here. So I'll go to download. We're going to download the ISO image here. We're going to download it to my ISO folder, to my downloads folder here. And as you can see, it's just going to take a few seconds to download. So now that the version has been downloaded, I'm going to go into my folder here, and you can see here we have the 3.2 gig Manjaro Linux ISO. I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag this over to my Ventoy disk here. I'm going to say move here. It's going to move that file over to there. And now we've done that. So if I go over to Ventoy, you can see that I have one ISO here. Now, just for the purposes of using the boot menu and so on, we're going to go over to another version of Linux. We're going to go to Ubuntu, and we'll download Ubuntu, and we'll download Ubuntu Server. Download Ubuntu Server Long-Term Service Edition. Click on that, and then let it start downloading. We'll download that to the same place. Won't take very long to download, although their servers are not as fast as Manjaro's servers, but we'll let this download and then we'll come back in a second. So in the meantime, whilst we're waiting for Ubuntu to download, I went ahead and downloaded Linux Mint, which is another really good version of Linux, as well as Proxmox, because it's always really handy to have a version of that. But I'm going to drag all these over now. We're going to click that and we're going to move them over to Ventoy, and we're going to say yes, and move them over. It's going to copy the files over. And now we have all of those files moved over to Ventoy. Now I have 4 ISO images on one USB stick. So once you've done with dragging and dropping all of the ISO images that you want onto your USB stick, what you're going to do is you're going to put the USB stick into your computer and you're going to restart the computer. So we're going to do that now. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you boot into Ventoy. Now my computer's restarting. With most systems, you're going to have to hit delete or F10 or F12 depending on your system to get into the BIOS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit delete a couple of times to get into the BIOS. So now we're in the BIOS now. So when you go to the boot settings, you're going to want to boot into the partition of the Ventoy USB stick. Don't boot into the device, just boot into the partition. This is labeled partition 2. So I'm going to hit partition 2. And what's going to happen is going to boot into that. And as you can see here on the screen, I have Kali Linux here, Linux Mint, Manjaro, and Proxmox all listed here. So those are all the systems that I've got on there right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to load up Linux Mint, which is a really good version of Linux. I'm going to hit enter on that, and it's going to boot it as if it would if it was just by itself on a USB stick. So now we're going to hit start Linux Mint, so then it'll boot into this system by itself, working exactly as you would expect it to work, as if you had burned the ISO image to a USB stick pretty much by itself. So now, as you can see, it's loaded up to Linux Mint here. Everything as normal, of course. So as you can see here, you've got the computer, the home folder, install Linux Mint. This is a live version of Linux, so it's not installed, it's just running from that system. So now I'm going to go to preferences. I'm going to go down to system information here, system info. And this is a really good way to actually see what your system, what the version of Linux you put on finds about your operating system. So in this case, it can see my processor here, which is really good. It can see all the memory. It can see my hard drive space, although it'll only see what's on the USB stick. But really importantly, what you'll see here is, does it actually find your graphics card? And here you can see it actually finds my 5700 XT. So it's actually loading the correct drivers, at least what's built into the kernel for it to run. So this is a really good way to find out if your computer is actually even going to better run decently enough under Linux with proper hardware acceleration. But as you can see, it runs a normal way. This is how Ventoy is. And if I go to the start button and I shut down the computer and I click shut down, and after a while, I'm just going to take out the USB stick, which is what Linux Mint is asking me to do, hit enter, and it's going to reset as normal. And then boot into my computer as I normally would. Well, there you have it. Installing Ventoy, setting it up, booting to it, and selecting images that you download. It's very simple, very drag and drop. No need to use Etcher all the time. No need to use any of those programs all the time. I'm sure there'll be a lot of sad faces from those companies, but this does help people who are used to installing images on a frequent basis. At my work, I do this all the time because I'm insane. We keep doing this all the time. I've been teaching my students how to be insane. So this is definitely going to solve some of those problems. I kind of going to treat this now as a kind of USB tech version of Alcoholics Anonymous type of deal. And we're going to get through this together. I'm going to tell my students how to get through this because it does drive them crazy. It drives me crazy. And hopefully it won't drive you guys crazy anymore. I hope you have a functional Ventoy USB stick. The size of the USB stick doesn't really matter that much. The more space you've got, the more ISO images, the more happy you can be. If you have multiple USB sticks with multiple installations of Ventoy, that may be a problem for a later date, but I advise getting some kind of large USB stick to avoid potential crazy problems later. But hopefully this video was enjoyable. Please do like the video if you do like it. Subscribe to the channel if you do like the content from me. That does make me very happy, and it does help the algorithm a lot, obviously. And if you do want to see something more about Linux, about some other tech stuff, then please do drop a comment below. And in the next video, I am going to take new users through installing Linux. If you haven't seen the video about Elder Scrolls Online in Linux, please do head up here somewhere above my head and click there, and it will take you to that video as well. As always, this has been Robert, and I'll see you in the next video.